Good evening, City Council. I'm Kathleen Mallory, the city's Planning and Sustainability Manager, and I'm joined with Kelly Morgan from Harrison and Associates, and we're here to present the City of Oxnard's compliance fee study. With that, I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you, Kathleen. My name is Kelly Morgan, and as Kathleen said, I am a project manager with Community Development and Housing Department at Harrison Associates, and had the pleasure of helping to prepare the study, along with Hita Mosesman, Vice President of the Community Development and Housing Department at Harrison Associates. And slide. So Harris was retained by the city to prepare a compliance fee study for compliance and enforcement activities for 4 business types in the city: alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, and firearm sales and ranges. The city currently does have a compliance fee for alcohol, however, does not have a compliance fee for the other 3 types of businesses. When referring to compliance fees, these are basically fees to recover costs associated with ensuring compliance for those businesses in alignment with city council goals in that arena. Slide. So the methodology that we utilized in order to prepare the study and estimate the costs associated with compliance activities is consistent with the city's financial management policies to specifically recover direct and indirect costs or staff time and third-party expenses incurred by the city to undertake activities for compliance. In examining the cost and expenses, we looked at what it cost the city to provide these regulatory activities, which included staff time in terms of hours by position required for all compliance-related tasks, according to current codes for items like permits, application review, inspections, investigations, and enforcement. We also applied an inflator based on the Consumer Price Index and took a 3-year average of what the Consumer Price Index published by the State Board of Equalization at the state level, applying an inflator of 4.2% to those costs to reflect increases in costs going forward. We also looked into the cost for third-party contracts, where those types of contracts would be required through compliance activities. Slide. The city data that we looked at included salary information, including benefits and all staff costs. So with respect to the salary, we took a mid-range number from the city's current salary and cost information. We looked at compliance and inspection fees in terms of the worksheet that the city prepared in July of 2021 and did apply a cost inflator to that to reflect current costs now. We used the city's interactive financial reporting tool that we accessed through the city's website, along with looking at notices to current and future alcohol retailers, city codes, ordinances, and resolutions, and the planning division fee schedule, along with the current city budget that reflects actuals and a 2018 cost of services study. Next slide. We conducted staff interviews as well with various departments of the city, including community development, finance, human resources, the city attorney's office, and the police department. And through those interviews, we worked to track those activities and tasks related to compliance, including those staff persons who complete these compliance activities, along with the number of hours that it takes per year or per business for the staff, the expenses related to compliance activities, and then looking at third-party contracts where these might be required, where a subject matter expert may need to be included. Next slide. And so the number of businesses assumed in the study is displayed on the slide. As you can see, we assumed 265 alcohol businesses, 28 cannabis businesses, and of those 28, 16 are retail, 8 manufacturing, 1 testing, and 3 distribution. And then we assumed 4 firearm retailers and 158 retailers selling tobacco. Next slide. So in terms of the firearm compliance research and analysis that we conducted, we determined that one of the main components of the cost of compliance had to do with annual permit inspections for these types of businesses. Also, another piece of the cost was the cost to prepare the study, which is something the city is allowed to recoup as a cost for compliance. So a prorated piece of the cost of the study has been applied to compliance fees, and you'll see this also reflected on the subsequent slides that deal with the other businesses as well. So that really gives us those 2 pieces to give us the total compliance and enforcement costs for firearms for permit renewal. And we'll go over what those specific fees are in the next slide. So as this table shows, there is currently not an existing fee for firearm retailers. We did assume that there are 4 businesses in the city that would be selling firearms potentially, and then we looked at a 3-year period and calculated the amount of staff time and other costs that would be related to compliance activities, and that cost was $452 per retailer. And so if you take 452 multiplied by the 4 businesses, that totals $1,808 in projected revenue for the 23-24 fiscal year. You'll see that the compliance fee does go up in fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26, also resulting in increased revenues for those years. And that is based on the CPI inflator that we assumed, which does take into account increases in staff salaries and increases in costs reflective of inflation. Next slide. So in terms of the alcohol compliance fee, you'll notice that this has a few more component parts than the firearms fee. There are more regulatory activities involved here, including the license oversight for noncompliance, police investigation for noncompliance, the deployment and oversight of alcohol education programs, alcohol impact inspections, responsible beverage service training, and a pro rata piece of the compliance study cost, as previously mentioned. All of these component pieces make up the compliance and enforcement costs that go into the permit renewal fee. Next slide. And so this slide reflects the existing fee located all the way to the left, currently set at $265 per business. We did log 265 alcohol businesses. So for fiscal year 23-24, based on all those component pieces that we went over in the previous slide, this does equate to $385 per business. The fee does go up somewhat. That is based on looking at what the city's current costs are for compliance. If multiplying $385 by the 265 businesses, this does equate to about $102,000 of fee revenue in fiscal year for 23-24. And with the 4.2% CPI inflator applied to fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26, the fees and revenue do increase, again, reflecting inflation and increasing costs for compliance. So your city code allows for 4 different categories of cannabis businesses: retail, manufacturing, testing, and distribution. And it does limit the total number of permits by business category as well. Additionally, you don't currently permit cultivation in the city. And so the number of cannabis businesses assumed for the study, totaling about 28, do include 16 retail, 8 manufacturing, 1 testing, and 3 distribution. The fee for cannabis compliance costs does have a number of components. There's the cannabis renewal application, which is reviewed by the city manager and legal counsel, quarterly inspections at the business and compliance checks level, a fee for police live scan services, a fee for extended background review through the police department, and again, a pro rata piece for the compliance study. And then additionally, there are some optional activities and expenses that are not reflected in the fee, such as annual audit of the cannabis business to verify the revenue and processing payments received from the different businesses. So all of these factors, except for the optional, do go into total the cost for compliance and enforcement for these types of businesses. So on this slide, you'll see the estimated fees associated with this business. You can see the fees the same for each business, coming in at $5,081, representing what it does cost to regulate and perform compliance activities associated with the business. And given the number of businesses, we estimate a total amount of revenue of $142,000 in fiscal year 23-24. And then you can see it does go up with the application of the CPI inflator for fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26. For tobacco compliance fees, the component parts going into the calculation of total expenses and costs to the city are annual permit compliance review, police decoying inspections, prosecuting tobacco retailers, a pro rata portion of the compliance study cost, and a declaration of nuisance cost as well. That all goes into total the expenses associated with compliance for this business type. For the related fee, we have 158 businesses in the city, and at a recommended fee of $252 for fiscal year 23-24, it would generate approximately $39,851 to cover the city's costs for regulating these businesses. And with the CPI inflator, that would kick in for fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26. You can see both the fee and revenue generated increase over those fiscal years as well. So all of these fees that we just reviewed are summarized in this table on the slide. Again, the city currently does charge an alcohol compliance fee of $265. Based on the analysis and calculations that we did and estimated for fiscal years 23-24, we identified that the fee should increase up to $385 per business based on current costs. Cannabis permit renewals would come in at $5,081 per business, firearms at $452, and tobacco at $252 per business. So in addition to showing the total recommended annual fee per business per year, we also did want to call to your attention the last 2 columns of this table, which are titled Annual Fees Businesses, Other California Cities. We looked at other cities in Southern California to see what their compliance fees were and discussed this a little bit more in detail on the following slide, including which cities charge which fees. And so here you can see the various cities we reviewed. It ranges anywhere from Carpinteria to Long Beach, Santa Cruz, and Ventura. And you can see they do identify a range of fees amongst the different business types. So for alcohol compliance fees, they range anywhere from $100 to $5,000 per business. Cannabis ranges anywhere from $298 all the way up to $12,530 per business. Firearms do range from $111 to $284, and tobacco ranges from $30 per business to $600 per business. So it's a pretty wide range for most of these business types. And it should be noted that the variance for some of these fees amongst the various cities is attributed to some cities where they do adopt fees. Maybe they don't adopt them or update them, I should say, very often to reflect the current cost of doing regulation and compliance, while some of these reported fees are a little bit more recent. So you can see the proposed fees for Oxnard at the very top row tend to be on the low or the mid-range, with exception of the firearms permit renewal. And this is really just simply based on the costs that were calculated in terms of what the city has to do and has to complete in order to regulate and make sure that there's compliance for firearms businesses. So in terms of the process followed outside of calculating the cost of preparing the study, there was quite a bit of engagement done, including meetings with affected businesses in late 21. And we did want to note the study did take some time to complete to make sure that we had all of the right data and all of the most updated data. There was no significant input or concerns reported through the outreach efforts that were done. It should be noted fees increased since late 2021 due to the CPIs we discussed with city contracts and staff hourly rate increases as well. And the substantial inflation that's been experienced over the last couple of years is also a factor in the study and the amounts. The firearm renewal fee is higher compared to other jurisdictions, but through our analysis, it reflects what it does cost to complete those compliance activities. All other fees, should be noted, are within a range of normal. The West Ventura County Business Alliance did comment on the cannabis fees through the outreach process and commented on the impact to business viability as well. So in terms of the financial impact, or the fiscal impact of the fees of adopting or not, if the city decides to adopt, it would experience an estimated revenue being brought in of roughly over $890,000 over 3 years. So that would be a total of all the fees that we discussed from 23-24 through 25-26. If the city decided not to adopt these fees, it would equate to a revenue loss of a little over $680,000, taking into account that there is a current alcohol compliance fee at this point in time. And not adopting would also prevent the city from being able to recover the costs that are actually being incurred to regulate these businesses. So we also wanted to review a little bit about the existing cannabis finance structure in the city. There was a business tax for cannabis that was approved by the voters of the city in 2018, and this tax is similar to your transit occupancy tax. And so the table on this slide basically represents what cannabis business taxes were voted in 2018. The tax rates that were voted in range anywhere from 2.5% to 6%, depending on the type of business. There is a community benefit tax of 1% and a one-time payment that varies depending on the type of business. So as you can see, between retail, testing, distribution, and manufacturing. And so on May 23rd, the Community Services, Public Safety, Housing and Development Committee considered the compliance fee study. At this meeting, the executive director of the West Ventura County Business Alliance did express concern regarding the amount of cannabis compliance fees and that taxing may drive businesses away. The study did show, though, that the city's proposed cannabis compliance fee is within the middle range charged by other California communities. And so with that, the committee voted 3-0 in favor of recommending approval of the study. So therefore, it is recommended that the City Council conduct a public hearing concerning the introduction of an ordinance adding sections 13-1 and 13-2 to Article 1 of Chapter 13 of the Oxnard City Code, adopt a compliance fee study establishing compliance fees on businesses that sell firearms, alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco, and approve the first reading by title only and waive further reading of the ordinance adding sections 13-1 and 13-2 to Article 1 of Chapter 13 of the Oxnard City Code, codifying compliance fees for firearms, alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco businesses.
Thank you, Kelly. And with that, we're available to answer any questions, and thank you.